he did Preacher, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did
Yeah,
indeed.
And very good it is too. Yeah, yeah, I like him. Nice bloke.
Oh yeah, he's a super nice guy, very
Yeah.
talented. You know, he does a lot of work on. He produces a lot of. One of the areas that he's really into is World War II. So he produces a lot of World War, combat books, and he's currently kind of curating and writing the lead strip in a series for the Rebellion guys called Battle Action, which is essentially an update of the 70s IPC title Battle Picture Weekly, which he kind of grew up reading.
It was called Battle of Britain when I was I was alive.
Now it's funny you should mention that, mate, because Battle of Britain is a strip that when I was at IPC, I revived with DC Comics, with Garth writing the script and Colin Wilson doing the art. And now all of those old IPC titles are owned by Rebellion, and Garth works on a bunch of them. In Battle Action, him and the artist Keith Burns is a wonderful aviation artist. They do the strip Johnny Red, which is essentially about a Scouse working class fighter pilot who somehow or other ends up flying with the Russian Air Force, and what ensues, and it's an excellent strip. But yeah, he's a super talented guy, and he's had a lot of success, which he deserves.
Yeah,
delicious pints of Guinness served at the local
yes.
ale house.
I thought you were off the Guinness.
Well, while I was there, I was temporarily back on it. Yeah, and
you had to be really, yes.
That's right.
Yes,
there are certain periods of times when I will wholeheartedly jump back into the Guinness. Christmas is another one. So
well, my first wife, when she was pregnant, the doctor, confirmed by my mother, I might say, recommended that she drink at least a pint of Guinness a day. And we got these huge children, so I don't know. I think it works.
I know. I think it's wise advice. It definitely was a doctor's prescription at some point, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was told when I was I went to see an NHS shrink for one day. This was to placate the same wife, and because I was in fact having a breakdown of sorts, but it didn't last very long. So I saw this bloke, and he said, you seem to be smoking marijuana. And I said, yeah, I have smoked marijuana, yes. He said, well, they cut it with cocaine these days. I mean, he knew nothing about drugs at all. He said, so if I were you, I would change from the marijuana to a couple of pints of Guinness a day. so I've never heard of Guinness being offered as
an alternative to marijuana and cocaine.
Yeah, right.
Long may it continue to be so.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he disappointed me. Obviously, he wasn't a particularly knowledgeable guy. So and he put me on Largactil, which I have to say is one of the worst drugs I've ever been on. Again, I only lasted about a week, and I was suicidal on it. So,
wow.
Generally speaking, what I did start to do was brisk walks around Richmond Park, which actually did the trick.
well, actually, it's funny that the late Michael Mosley, who's the doctor who died in unfortunate circumstances this year, he was out in a Greek island, and he went for a walk in the middle.
Oh,
of the
yes,
day.
yeah,
Mad Dogs and Englishmen and all that,
yeah.
and ended up expiring. And ironically, he'd written a lot of really good stuff on looking after your body into old age and how and basic steps that you can take to get yourself in shape. And following his stuff is essentially how I became a healthier human being compared to what I used to be. And now some of it's not rocket science. Some of it is simply not drinking 10 pints of Guinness a day.
Yes.
But nonetheless, I've actually forgotten why I got into this. It's something to do with So, what was it? Something to do with health and some.
Yeah, Michael Mosley and his recommendations for your for people's healthy.
For clean living. And I can't remember how I backed into it then, but it was a very unfortunate thing that happened to him, because he was a guy who reversed his own diabetes purely via diet through being a doctor, and so then he popularized this fasting diet, which has become very popular around the world and really works in terms of triumphing over diabetes. And he sorted his own diabetes out. He was super healthy, standard bearer for health in late age. And I think, to a degree, he got so healthy that he took a basic risk which he shouldn't have done. Climb up a mountain in the heat of the day, and it went badly for him.
Yes, quite.
I mean, it was highly unfortunate, but kind of ironic.
At that age, I think it is. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I think you start to think that you're younger than you are particularly if you feel fitter than you are, than you would normally feel. Yeah.
Well, Mosley had done a bunch of those tests, which were, this is your age, but this is your actual physiognomic age, if you will.
Yeah.
And he'd brought his numbers down so that when he was tested, I think he was about, say, 67. He was testing as kind of being more like my age, like 60, 61. And all of that's great stuff, isn't it? But you've just got to be careful that you don't push the boat too far.
Yeah, that's why I don't go out anymore.
I remember, it's funny you're saying about being on that drug and you're feeling kind of suicidal. I remember at the peak of my high blood pressure, I once had I had a friend back then I was arguing a lot with, and I'd had to go and get my blood pressure done and whatnot. And literally in the hour before that, I ended up having a humdinging argument. And then I came back from the blood pressure test with an extra prescription on top of my normal meds, because my blood pressure seemed to be, going through the roof, kind of like Oliver Hardy in County Hospital style. Comedically high. And so they put me on a cocktail of what was then 4 drugs. And within a week, it was exactly the same thing. I thought literally taking these drugs is going to kill me, because I feel worse than I've ever felt in my entire life. I just felt like I was walking around with an anvil on my back, zero energy. And sometimes when that happens, you've got to take a step back, haven't you, and go, hang on.
You have, and I mean, and also, I think brisk walks in, when Calvert used to go balmy, the first thing we'd do is get him into the Priory, and get him sort of, so that he was away from the law, because when he was balmy, he usually got into trouble of some sort. And so we'd whisk him off to the Priory, and then we'd come and get him from the Priory, still fairly balmy, but not as balmy as when he went in. Then we'd take him up to the Lake District, and he was moaning and groaning the whole time as I insisted on these brisk walks. I mean, it was like Baden Powell or somebody, said, "Come on, Calvert, keep walking, Calvert. Up you get. That's a good boy. Come on, lad." Anyway, and it worked. Within, say, a week or so, he was usually in much better shape and had got rid of all the drugs they were giving him. And honestly, the drugs. When I got back this time, I had, I'm on a prescription for marijuana, and I had a lot of pain, and I took more than I usually did, and honestly, it really does completely bugger your brain up if you take too much, if you don't kind of keep a proper sane sort of control of it. I speak from Mr. Control. I just want to show you this. I'm very proud of it, actually. It's a really nice book. It's just come out in the States. Can you see it?
Oh
yeah, there it is. It's a new edition.
Lift it up a bit more for me, please, Mike. There we go. Yeah, got it.
It's the main Von Beck stories, Warhound and the World's Pain, and City in the Autumn Stars. and they've done a really really nice job of it. As they did with the Elric books that they put out. I don't know if you've seen them, but
I have, and I'm a fan.
Yeah,
that is an incredibly beautiful edition.
Yeah, and there's a map inside as well. Admittedly, it's a map of Europe because that's where it's set.
Could I have a quick look at the map, please, Mike?
Yeah, sure.
While you're finding the map, I remember why I was talking about Mosley. He was saying that there's actually a lot of like serious medical evidence that walking out in nature is incredibly good for you, and you should have a daily prescription to do it. Look at that though. I love the dark leathery green of it, the dark sea of it all.
And inside the dust wrapper, hang on, they're making a feature of this now. There's the Chrysochilius. It's not my favorite Chrysochilius cover for that book, but nonetheless, there it is. A lot of people like it a lot, so amazing. So I'm not arguing. Yeah, so there's no interior illustrations, but there weren't. There's not really much they can draw, and of course, most of the stuff that they're doing is second rights material, which I don't mind. I mean, it's all second rights material. It's a new generation, really, and just hoping they flog enough copies to make my Christmas a happy one.
Me too. Me too. I'm going to take this opportunity to say welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. I'm here with my old pal Michael Moorcock, and this edition is another edition, and what I want to be an annual conversation, which is Michael Moorcock's Winter Solstice. So we're going to put this out on the solstice, or on the eve of the solstice, or on the eve of the solstice, Mike. As we are talking, that's about 4 or 5 days away. But
okay. My birthday's on the 18th, so it's around that same period. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're 2 days away from your birthday, actually, Mike.
That's right.
I think it's the 16th today, as we
it's the 18th is my birthday.
Brilliant.
I'm going to have a decent dinner.
Lovely. Have you got any specific plans what you're going to have?
Oh yeah, I mean, I every year. Well, with COVID we didn't do it, but now every year we go to I think it's the best place in Austin. I mean, there may be better, but I don't know of them. And they do a prime rib, a really good prime rib, and a sort of monstrous baked potato, sort of with everything on it. And
what's the name of that place, Mike?
I can't remember. It used to be called Harvey's, but it's not called that anymore.
I think I've been there. I think I've been there with Bob Wayne from DC Comics.
Oh, right, yeah, you might well have done, yes, because it's sort of like it's dark with booths, like a big saloon or pub, yeah.
I mean, I've been to a whole bunch of Austin restaurants because Bob's a good mate of mine. He's from Fort Worth, and we've done a few road trips across Texas with him, basically showing me around over the years. Yeah. But we've spent quite a bit of time in Austin, and let's see, I've been to a lot of places like a lot of the barbecue restaurants, like Angelo's and places like that. I've been to a bunch of them.
Yeah,
the Salt Lick, I think that's in Austin.
Oh yeah, the Salt Lick. Yeah,
been family style barbecue with.
That's right. Yeah.
Probably enjoyed
I can't do that anymore. It's for some reason I think I probably overdid it. I've gone off barbecue. We've got a good place by us, but when we used to have beef bones, they do these huge beef bones, which with a lot of meat on them, obviously, and not just the bone. We used to get those, and they'd make a couple of meals actually, but they become so expensive that they seem to me anyway to be more expensive than the actual cow. I mean, they're vastly expensive. So I don't very often go there these days, but I took the last time we went to an Austin barbecue place was Michael Chabon. While he was in town, wanted to go to a barbecue place, and it was very late. It was after after his gig at Book People,
Yeah.
Which is a very good bookshop, as you probably know. I mean, it's one of the few independent bookshops still around, and so we found this place, which actually wasn't that bad, but it wasn't the best in. Well, they all say they're the best in Texas anyway. So I don't know. And we've taken people to. Well, when did it used to? What was it called? Oh God, it's called the something capital of Texas. Anyway, I won't babble on like an old fart trying to remember the names of ancient restaurants that have probably been torn down now. I mean, so much of Austin, I don't know when you were last there, but so much of it has been torn down, and it's like a miniature Houston now.
Wow.
It's just, it's big tower blocks everywhere. It's the huge influx of Californians into Austin, and of course, what's his name, Musk, who's building. I mean, it's getting to be very science fictiony. Well, it's like an old-fashioned 1950s science fiction show. He's got these huge complexes where the cars are made, but he also has. He looks after his people, so they've got their own stores. They've got their own what's it called? What's that thing they do? that sport thing they do.
Oh yeah, I know, pickleball.
Pickleball. Yeah. They've got their own pickleball courts, and it's very. I mean, it's only, you know, I haven't met any of the people from there yet. Linda has. But my view is that, you know, they'll soon be walking around like Cybermen or something.
Yeah. Well, it's old school capitalist paternalism, isn't it?
Yes,
just
it is.
Return to all of that.
Well, it is, but I mean, the difference between Port Sunlight, say, and Elon Musk is that Musk is inclined to fire, you know, groups of people by the 10,000.
Yeah.
You know, at the stroke of a pen. So I'm not against it, but I'd like to see how long it lasts. You know, I'm still a bit unsure about Elon, and
well, I'm thoroughly unsure about him.
Yes.
I did an interview about a particular book in support of a particular franchise, and I'm being circumspect about what that was because I want this to make the edit, so I'm not going to mention that bit, but I'm going to mention the Musk part of it. So I got talking with these journalists about their work, and they reminded me that whatever this thing was, Musk made an appearance, and I was like, wow, you know, there you go. It's like, so you've got your own supervillain appearing. You know, that's exactly what it is. He's essentially like a Tony Stark figure, but you know, without having a cool Iron Man suit and all that kind of stuff, and without being charming, that bit, while being a bit of a, you know, and all of that. And actually, it was when I came to do it, I had to cut all that stuff out. And it was a bit more lucid than my commentary just now, right? But yeah, they made me cut it all out. It made me realize I had only ever met people who think Elon Musk is a prick. I actually, in my normal day-to-day life, I've never met anybody who actually admires him or think he's done anything of value. And I was fascinated and flabbergasted to realize that my view and the view of my contemporaries is not the only one. There are people who abide in the world who think he's a genius, which I'm fairly certain he's not. I think he's just a rich guy who used money to make more money.
Well, he's a rich guy who read too much science fiction and too many comic books when he was a kid. I mean, they're all, you know, that sort of a dream, and which is, you know, all right in a way. But when you think of how much is needed, you know, on the planet itself, it's an escape as well. And I really don't like people using their money to escape from the realities of you know, what's going on the planet now. So whereas, you know, the you know, Cadbury's and you know, and God, I can't remember their name. The soap people.
Yeah.
They had a they were just concerned for their workers. I mean, they were concerned for the. I mean, obviously there were certain puritanical rules, like you couldn't have a pub, so people had to sort of trek miles to find a pub, and that sort of thing. Like Port Sunlight, and places like that. And I'm all for them in Victorian times, but I'm not sure, since then we have learned that this is the job of government, not of private enterprise, to supply those things to people. And the more it diverts from that, from being the job of government, the less I'm easy with it. I mean, I suppose I'm old-fashioned, but it seems like we're going round again from about 1875 all the way around again. So I don't know. Anyway, burble, moan.
So Mike, what are you working on at the moment?
Well, I'm still rewriting the Wounds of Albion. I don't know when I last spoke to you. Oh, I do know when I last spoke to you, but not on. That was real. As it were.
We last spoke when we met over the summer, but
that's right.
We didn't talk in detail about how it was going with Wounds of Albion. I remember, I know what it was when we met. You just finished the draft and the first draft, and you were overjoyed about it. And then you messaged me a week or two later and said, "Well, actually, I've now gone back and realised." Now that I'm no longer DMOP happy, if you will, I've got to go back and do some more work on it.
That's right. I was getting the times mixed up a bit. That's right. Yeah. And it's it's a pot of toss. It's terrible. It's the worst. It's the worst thing I've ever done. I mean, probably since I was 15, and I probably was better when I was 15 actually in terms of storytelling. It's very, because it's autobiographical, I'm writing about, I'm trying to put down myself as, I'm trying not to show myself as a great person. I'm trying to sort of show the things that I feel bad about, I feel a bit guilty about, or whatever it is, But what's happened is and I think Linda and I sort of worked this out. There was this kind of dichotomy inside me in which I was saying, "You were a fucking bastard, you did this, you did that, you should have done this, you should have done that." And then there's another part of me that's saying, "No, I wasn't too bad. I didn't do this, I did that." And those bits come across as virtue signaling. They come across as me saying what a great bloke I was. So it's hideous in every possible way you could see it. But since then, I've done a lot of restructuring at the moment, and it doesn't so much need rewriting as it needs a machete, to hack out the great big. I mean, it's probably going to be the shortest book I've done in quite a while, but it certainly needs a lot of work.
I mean, Mike, that to me is mind blowing, because to roll the people watching this back to our last conversation on the topic, it was at the peak of the summer. It was in August. It was a beautiful day out there in the English countryside, and as I rocked up, you were on cloud nine. You were like, "The great thing about today is I've just finished this, and it is one of the things I am the happiest with." So when you said a few weeks later, "Actually, I've just reread it," and you delivered the opinion you just have, I was genuinely surprised, because all we talked about during the summer was, "Man, I'm so happy."
yeah. No, that was probably the biggest bit of self-deceit I've been capable of in a long time. But the stuff in the book is good. The actual, the meat of the book is good. It's just I've got to hack out the dross and redo it a bit. There is quite a lot of guilt in it, and that was sort of souring the book. It was not making it a good book.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd sort of overdone that somewhat. And happily, when we got back to France, and after quite a lot of breastbeating and all the rest of it, Linda and I talked about it, and she sort of talked me down from the guilt stuff and said, look, you know, you were doing this when that happened. You couldn't have done that or that and this, you know, and so she actually helped me a lot in getting my head together around that, which I would never have expected at this late stage in our relationship. I mean, she's always been, you know, because normally she's saying, "You stupid bastard, what you do that for?" But she was very, very supportive, and it was very helpful for that to happen. And I was very surprised.
Well, that's lovely.
Yeah. So yeah. I saw quite a lot of people in Paris actually. This time, I mean, visitors, people coming in from different parts of the world. Yeah. There's a guy called, Steve. He's the Outlaw bookseller. I don't know if you've ever seen his book.
Okay, yeah. Didn't you record an interview with him?
I did, yes.
That was really good. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it was a nice interview. It was an interview that, in a sense, I deserved, because he talks more and faster than I do, and so he would ask me a question, and I'd say, "Well, yeah, it was," and he said, and then, you know, and then he'd come in with another. I was just sitting there nodding a lot of the time, but I mean, it was a great interview, and that was nice. And I saw a guy called Rob Latham, who reviews for the Los Angeles Review of Books. I mean, he's an SF fan from LA. Yeah. And I saw another guy. So it was actually quite a pleasant time for socializing when I got back. And Warhound and the World's Pain has at last been signed. We're finally doing it.
Great. So what can you tell me about that project?
Well, it's the first major project of the artist. It's his first big job, and he really wanted to do it. He came to Jean-Luc Fromental, you know, who in fact Titan had published several of his books. Yeah. He came to Jean-Luc and said, you know, I'd like to do this as a BD. And Jean-Luc said, fine. And then we went into this pit of negotiation, which, you know, we were all doing it basically for the artist, you know, who really wanted to do it. So, but anyway, he's doing it now, and Jean-Luc's, you know, getting on with it. And in general, we're making it real.
Wonderful.
It's going to be quite a long book. I think it's going to be 120 pages at least, maybe more. So that's happening. What have I been doing? I've been doing quite a lot, and yet it doesn't seem like I've been doing anything. I've done a short story for John King's little magazine called Verbal. I don't know if you've ever seen it, and that's a nice, that's a job I enjoyed. I've been doing mostly sort of little things really while I warmed up, I suppose, for the rewrite.
Yes.
But since I've been back, I've mostly been doing the rewrite. And
you've been dug into the rewrite. And how long are you going to be? When are you going to be heading back to Paris?
Well,
Europe?
I think it might be. It depends, of course. I haven't got a green card or a passport at the moment, so it might be never. But as soon as I get my green card and passport back, I'll be able to tell. But we might come a little bit earlier and leave a little bit earlier, because the sort of November weather really gets to Linda. She's just, you know, she's a real wimp as far as.
And it was a cold November this year as well.
It was a nasty. It was wasn't a particularly nice year at all this year.
No.
The best part of this visit, I think, was really taking that cottage in Whitney, and of course, as I said, we know the farmer, and so it was really just going back to look at our old, look at our old cottage, which they've let. I mean, it looks like a witch's cottage now. It's really overgrown, and the thatch is all rotting, and it's. But it did give me an idea for a story, so that was all right. In fact, I got a lot of good ideas for stories while I was in England, more than when I was in France this time, and seeing all the family this time in a more relaxed, just at home, as it were, rather than in restaurants and public places, was really, really a joy. I mean, I can't tell you how much I got out of that. Did me a lot of good. Linda enjoyed it too. I wasn't sure, but she's even spoken once or twice about buying somewhere in England, which I mean is we'd have to sell something here before we bought something there. So we're talking about maybe getting somewhere in the West Country or somewhere sort of like that, and just doing what we used to do, which was essentially in England we would we had a place in Spain then, and so we'd go to Mallorca every for a few months every year at least, and that was very pleasant. So maybe it'll turn out like that. I don't know. I mean, I still need a wheelchair that Linda won't let me have, because she thinks I'll mow down everybody on the street. but I think she might be compromising on a tricycle. So I might get I might return to my childhood, when I remember swapping my tricycle for a Hornby train, and it caused quite a lot of kerfuffle when the parents found out about it, and I had to give it back.
And
they had to give.
I was saying terrible. Giving your Hornby train back. I could see why you made the trade.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, my dad had a set and promised it to me. He'd also been doing this is the dad who ran off, but this is before he ran off. I remember being in his shed, and he had a big old Norton up on a rack that he was working on, and he said, basically, one day this will be yours. But what he didn't tell me is he'd swapped the train set he said he was going to give me for the Norton that he was working on. So I didn't get the Norton or the train set in the end, and neither did I get the insurance that he'd started to pay in for me when I was a little kid. But that was okay, because I told him that was okay. He was a bit feckless, my father, in some ways, unless it was to do with motorbikes, in which case he was motorbikes and sports cars were his real love. I couldn't learn to drive for years because my mother had set such a. She used to say, "Oh, your dad, he was all right, dear, but he loved his cars and bikes more than he loved us," and which was really perfectly true. Yeah. But it meant that I then felt that there was something wrong about driving, or riding a bike. And then when I did buy a bike, during my first marriage, my first wife made me take it back to the shop because she'd seen me ride through 2 sets of red lights without noticing. So I'm not the world's greatest driver.
I don't make any great claims in that department either. I don't think it's particularly part of the Sumner gene either, to be honest.
I taught myself to drive in a Rolls Royce, in a white Rolls Royce. Was it
your Rolls Royce, Mike?
No, it was a rented Rolls Royce. Every so often in the 70s, really, this was. I used to there was a particularly good deal in the rate of exchange between American money and English money, and it was incredibly cheap if you used an American credit card to rent an English car, as it were. So we were renting these Rolls Royces. Well, we were renting not just Rolls Royces, but 1 week we'd rent a Rolls Royce, another a Daimler, another. We were just going through all the posh saloon cars that there were, and so I'd rented this white Rolls Royce, and there's a back road between Ingleton and Clapham, and it's a road that's not used. I mean, you hardly ever see anybody on it at all because there's a faster road now that goes there. And so going back and forth between Ingleton and Clapham in Yorkshire, I basically taught myself how to drive, which is the best thing for me to do because I can teach myself pretty much anything, but I cannot take lessons. It's a phobia. It's not deliberate. I try all the time to learn things from people, but it never seems to work. My brain just turns to jelly. And I don't know if I told you this, but this is when we lived in that cottage in Witney. Linda said, it's time you got a license. You can't go on like this, because obviously I was driving frequently without a license or insurance. So I said, okay, I will, because she didn't want me to drive without that. So I got a driving instructor, local driving instructor. And after a little bit of a problem where I couldn't get into the car because it was too small, I got a larger car, and off we went. And the first trip we made, he said, "I don't know what you're worrying about, mate." He says, "There's you're driving perfectly. A couple more lessons, and you'll be absolutely perfect. There won't be any. We'll get you through the test in a trice." And I said, "Oh, well, that's good." And then as he continued to instruct me, I got worse and worse and worse, until by the 6th lesson, he had me going around the parking lot of the local supermarket, and he'd taken up smoking again. He'd become a nervous wreck, and I was too. I mean, the whole thing just collapsed, and that was my last attempt to get a driving. I just cannot. For some reason, I'm willing. I'm not resisting anybody. I'm willing to learn. I'm perfectly, there. I have no attitude, but the longer I'm taught, the worse I get. And I think it's just because from a very early age, really from about the age of 5, I suppose, because it was like this at school, I remember too. I could read before I went to school, so that we'd be doing a reading lesson, and I'd just flip through to the end of the book, and that was done. And I'd flip through to the end of the next one. That was done. It was just, and I'd get bored, just horribly bored. It wasn't, again, I had no attitude. I wasn't sort of, a rebel or anything. I just couldn't stand the boredom. And so they'd send me home saying, Michael's acting up at school again. And I wasn't really acting up. I just wanted something else to read than whatever it was, these primers that they were doing. So as well as that, I could teach myself from other books, and almost all of I am, what's it called? I'm not an idiot savant, although I can be an idiot, but I taught myself pretty much everything I know. I learned it from the books that they used to produce in the 19th century, late 19th century in particular, which were books for the working man, to educate the working man, when they used to have those working men's colleges, and William Morris and people used to teach at them. And so I just read all that stuff that was essentially the fundamentals of I suppose, a decent education. But of course, I can't do long division, because I never could grasp long division, because we'd had a lesson the time before we had the math lesson, which was about nature, and it was about a trapdoor spider. And I could not, and the teacher who came along next to teach us math, I got completely, totally confused between trapdoor spiders and long division, where you have to put a number below a line or something. And I always imagined that as a trapdoor spider. And that is the limits of my ordinary arithmetic. But I could do algebra. I loved algebra, and I could do algebra very, very easily and very happily. But I was learning that at the Steiner school that I went to, where their policy is to teach, or was then anyway, was to teach young kids algebra, you know, from pretty much from the start. And when I got to the next school, having been expelled from that one, I remember putting my hand up in the class and saying, "When are we going to be doing algebra, miss?" And she just laughed at me. She said, "Oh, that won't be for many a long year, young Moorcock." And you know, that was it. So I never did get to learn that either. So partly that's why I left school so early. I mean, I really wasn't. I was doing typing and English in the last year at least at the last school I was at. They sort of despaired of teaching me anything else. And I've still got my little book that tells me what classes to go to, you know, what times. And they're all English typing, English. I wasn't doing any other lessons, which of course was all I needed for what I was trying to become.
What you wanted to do and what you wanted to become.
Yeah. But it was a very weird. I mean, my mother was incredibly tolerant. She really did. It wasn't just, I just want my kid to do what he wants to do and grow up to be happy, that sort of thing that all parents pretty much say. But she actively tried to help me to get, to learn the skills I needed to be a writer, because I'd wanted to be a writer from the age of 9. I mean, I clearly wanted to be a writer from the age of 9. And that's when I did my first little, it wasn't a fanzine, but it was like a little fanzine called Outlaw Zone, which was pinched from Richmond Crompton. Anyway, that's the tale of the idiot savant.
When you look back on your childhood, do you have any particular memories of winter or this time of year, Christmas, that really leap out?
Well, that's one of the best things in Wounds of Albion. I had tremendous, wonderful memories of Christmas, and the book actually starts off with a memoir about that. And I remember just after the war, we went to a department store in Croydon. We lived in South London at that time, and I remember this is the first time I'd ever seen a color. I couldn't even I couldn't describe it, but it was indigo, and I'd never seen indigo before. I'd never seen the kind of colors that were in Fantasia, for instance, which they were also showing around that time, and just the incredible bursts of color that came around 1945, when things started to, when stores started to use neon again.
Yeah.
And when the lights went up in London, all of that. It was just amazing to me. That and Mickey Mouse. I mean, the guys from the airbase, the American guys from the airbase, had a projector and a lot of Mickey Mouse black and white movies, which they would. My family was friends with those guys, and so they'd come over for Christmas, to spend Christmas with us, and they'd bring this projector and the Mickey Mouse movies, and so it was a really great time. Even during the war, it was there was a sense of warmth and comfort to the whole thing, which I you know me. I mean, I'm a bit wary of nostalgia.
Yes.
But in this case, you know, I really do feel incredible nostalgia for those Christmases, and so there's that. And I've also invented a Christmas or two for the invented books in the invented parts of the book. So and there's quite a lot of large scenes of that kind, scenes of ceremony and it's a bit like Mother London in that there are a lot of crowd scenes, if you like, in it. You know, people scenes, lots of people enjoying themselves and that sort of thing. So basically, I'm you know, those scenes, although badly written at the moment and needing a lot of work, are still, you know, still scenes that I enjoy both reading and writing.
I can't wait to read those, Mike.
Well, I hope so. I mean, let's not put your hopes up, Andy. I could be at the end of my career. I could be, you know, all this stuff I'm talking about could just be pie in the sky.
I feel certain that isn't the case.
Well, there's stories of writers, you know, who sort of stopped writing when they were, you know, in their 40s, say. And whenever people asked them about their next book, they'd say, "Oh yes, you know, I'm really working on this great novel, a sort of wonderful novel that I'm doing." And then when they die, they find that there's nothing there. They've been doing nothing but you know, piecing little bits together, and there's lots of notes but no actual narrative. So I don't want to wind up like that, I must say. Yeah. With luck, I'm going to get some more toy soldiers for my birthday. Brilliant. That's something I look forward to. I know what they are because I opened them by accident, and it's a set of it's a set of Three Musketeers. Very nice. I think they're an Italian firm, either Italian or Spanish, called Prada, that make these very, very nice figures. And they're in. You know, I tend to buy figures to put in scenarios for the books. So the Three Musketeers and Dick Turpin and so on are all in my little whatever they're called. Yeah.
Almost like dioramas that you do for
diorama. That's it. That's the word. I couldn't think of it. Yeah.
Did you catch up with the second half of the French Three Musketeers?
Not yet. No. Yeah, well, the second half. It's the third half, isn't it? That's the one that hasn't come out yet.
Well, yeah.
They did. The second one was Milady. And then the third one was supposed to come out after the Count of Monte Cristo, right?
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, because that makes so much sense to me. Now, I didn't know that, but it makes sense because there's that great big cliffhanger at the end of Milady, and I just thought that was a stylistic choice. The fact that they're making a third one, I'm all in on that.
I mean, I did. I had exactly the same response to you, and of course, we watched it in French too. So you know, we thought maybe we'd missed something, you know, and no, I think they should be making it now.
Oh wow, I'm all over that. I think that's
quite.
I'm very pleased to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the best, by far the best Three Musketeers I think I've ever seen in terms of certainly in terms of following the book. You know, and there's all the stuff with the Huguenots and so on, which I like.
I think that all of that's true, but at the same time, it's highly propulsive and it moves like the clappers. It's constantly moving.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great use of all that aerial photography, stuff they couldn't have done in a pre-drone era, but they just make everything look so beautiful. Yeah. By the way, I on the same note, I really enjoyed Count of Monte Cristo as well. Thought that was great.
Haven't seen it yet.
I would recommend that. I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was had a lot of the same elements.
I think it was going to be harder to watch in French than the Three Musketeers for Linda, because she knows the Three Musketeers story a lot better. Actually, Count of Monte Cristo was the first Dumas I actually read. as opposed to, yeah. There's a bloke down in Minehead, I think it was, in Somerset. My mother liked Minehead for our holidays, and he had a marvelous library. I mean, he was he ran this, it was a boarding house, I suppose you call it. I don't know, what do they call it? Guest hotel, something. Anyway, whatever they call it. And he was a very nice man. And he was just absolutely over the moon that I liked reading. And so, we went into his library, and he's got, he had books top to bottom, on four walls. And he said, what do you like to read? I suppose, you like to read adventure stories or whatever, and I said, yeah. And so he gave me the Count of Monte Cristo in 2 volumes, which I would take up into onto the moors behind Minehead. I spent my whole holiday reading Count of Monte Cristo. Great time.
Yeah, I read it on Duke Street Park in Formby, in Liverpool suburbs, in I think it was the autumn, and I just on a couple of like successive Saturdays just sat there all day reading the book. And
yeah,
isn't it funny how you can place those seminal novels you read at certain points in your upbringing, you can place where you read them as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I could tell you which particular Edgar Rice Burroughs book I'd read, in which particular little bit of wood. We had a tiny wood up near us, because where I lived was on the borders of London and Surrey, really, and it hadn't completely been urbanized. So there was this little wood kind of left over, and it was very quiet. Hardly anybody went there. So I'd cycle up there with my dog, who would sometimes sit in the basket when he got tired, and find a quiet spot in the middle of this little wood, and I had an apple, a bottle of probably Tizer, which I hated, but it was about all there was at that time, and and a book and the dog. I mean, those are probably the happiest days of my life, as they say.
Yeah, well, I think that is the perfect memory-driven note for us to wind up on for this.
Well, yeah, since I've frozen in the little bit that I can see, and since you're not there at all, I would like to do this again as soon as rather than
Mike, I tell you what we'll do. We'll do another one as soon as possible in the new year, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good. And let's talk about the multiverse, but because we haven't really talked about that much. I mean, I'd like to talk about that.
I would love you to talk about it. So we'll definitely record another one in January, all about the multiverse. And for those of you watching, by the way, you can find links to buy both editions of Michael Moorcock's Multiverse from Titan Comics, and they are 2 amazing collections. And we'll talk about them again in detail in Mike's next appearance, which will be in January 2025.
Yeah, that'll be good. And meanwhile, happy Christmas to everybody, and particularly to you, Andy. Are you going home for Christmas? Or
Definitely, I'll be spending Christmas Day with my dad.
Yes. Good. Okay. How is he, by the way?
He's extremely well, and he's currently
good.
He's currently in the middle of conducting the Christmas choir in his nursing home. So he's the opposite to you. I can't get that dude to go in a wheelchair or use a conveyance of any kind. All he will do is walk around with his walking stick, which is really not up to the job these days. But he won't get in a wheelchair. That's something he's just not prepared to countenance.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, to me, it means an electric wheelchair means mobility in when I'm in town. I mean, I don't really need it in Texas, but I get so frustrated not being able to go anywhere on my own. So I that's the reason I want it. But I do understand why he doesn't want a wheelchair. I resisted it for a long time. because I've been in and out of wheelchairs with my foot and everything for what, over 20 years now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hadn't, but now I actually can't walk for more than a few yards. So I still want a nice. The thing is, I think I told you, Lang Jones told me how you can soup up those invalid scooters and make them go about twice the speed of they're meant to go at. And the minute Linda heard that, it meant it was the worst for me, because she said, "Oh my God! Not only you're going to be mowing people down, you're going to be mowing them down at speed." But it's great. I can be a grumpy old man on that thing. I can go, "You're out of my way, young man! Out of my way, you!"
Well, speaking of which, mate, my dad sends his love and
to him
specifically wanted me to tell you that he hope you had a very happy birthday and happy Christmas.
Yeah,
I hope you have both of those things, and we'll do this in very early in January, mate. We'll do it.
Tell him I want to hear a recording of his choir.
Right, I'll get that done for you. Somebody will be there with. I'll get it done. I'll get it done for sure.
Okay, all right,
and
great.
I give my love to Linda, and I hope you have an amazing festive season.
You too, Andy. You too. Best to all your family, and carrying on.
You know I will, and I know you will, Mike. And I look forward to talking more about the Wounds of Albion project, and let's get into the weeds of Michael Moorcock's Multiverse in January.
And we didn't talk about New Worlds either, which came out around that time.
This is it. There's so much to talk about. Yeah, absolutely right. So my promise to everybody watching this is we will endeavour to talk about food and gastronomics less next time and more about the actual books. But mate, it's so easy to talk about fine meats and pies with you that
it is indeed.
Completely distracted.
I know. I'm still on a quest for a pie in America, but I haven't found one yet. It's very strange. So I'll let you know how that quest continues.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna put the feelers out to the Federation of US Pie Lovers that I know and see if they've got any recommendations for us.
Well, yeah, I could actually. I'm thinking of working a pork pie into the Conan and Elric story, as the pies of doom or something of that sort. So.
I'm here for it. Take care of yourself, Mike. All the very best for the solstice.
Yeah,
I'll see you soon.
You too. Yeah,
take care, mate. All the best. Bye-bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.